my series, Diversity and Inclusion in TV, Radio and Film. I catch up with different industry experts each week who share their experiences on this very important matter and also share their thoughts and their opinions on how this industry can create an equal and open workspace. This week, I'm catching up with cinematographer. He was also selected as BAFTA Brit to Watch in 2011, and he's also more recently debuted as a film producer. Welcome, Damian Daniel.
Thank you, Samina.
No, you're welcome, and it's great to have you here, Damian. So, Damian, you've worked across documentaries, drama, music videos, commercials. What has your experience been working in this business?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in film and TV for about 25 years now, and the stark thing is, you know, around 95% of the sets I work on, be it film, be it TV, be it documentary, promos, etc. I'm the only black face a lot of those times, you know, and sometimes, you know, because you're so full on working on it, you don't, you know, you've got your job to do, you're working with people, but it's only when you step back a little bit and you look around and yes, I am the only black face. And, you know, and you think, wow, you know, this is London and this is what it's like. It's changing, and it is changing slowly, but more needs to be done to address this.
Oh, and why do you think that is? Why do you think crews are notoriously not diverse?
Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, film and TV. You know, when I started 25 years ago, and from time beforehand, it's a very cliquey group to get into. You know, and certainly, you know, from directors to producers, going to film school to learn, you know, the trades as well is very expensive. So people of a certain, you know, it's only open to people of a certain class, which then tends to be only people of a certain hue that are in this art form. But even when you get onto the technicals of being on a set, when you're working with riggers and working with electricians and grips, etc., there's still a kind of, you know, old boys network in there, or generations of families that have passed down that, you know, keep that line going.
It's almost dynastic.
Say that again?
It's almost dynastic.
It's almost, it is a little bit like that. I mean, you know, so people from my background, I mean, you know, I'm a Londoner, born and bred, proud Londoner, from a West Indian background. My mum and dad came from, my dad was from Barbados and my mum was from Grenada. So when they first came to, you know, this country, my mum was a nurse. And my dad first came with public transport. So he worked on the buses when he first arrived. And that was the same with, you know, a lot of West Indians that came to England in the 50s and 60s, because it was to help the push after the war.
Yeah.
So London Transport, NHS, service industries, Pinewood Studios, Elstree Studios, the BBC, Pathé weren't organisations that were actively recruiting out in the colonies, you know, because they've got their own club here, you know, so that's why. You know, that's why.
But of course, your parents' experience and your experience would have been very different.
Yes, I mean, you know, of course, my parents listened to the radio and they went to the cinema, but it was never. But what they're seeing on screen, you know, my mum loved, you know, a Western with John Wayne. You know, she loved watching. You know, my dad, you know, loved watching all those black and white films, the silver screen. But it was over there. Do you see what I mean?
World removed from what you're.
World removed. It wasn't one that, you know. I mean, you know, my mum and dad have no idea of, you know, what it's like working in film. And you know, when I, you know, said to mum that I want to go into film, it was almost like, well, what do you want to do that for? There's people that do that. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, you know, it's not for us.
Yeah.
You know, not for us. So, you know, so that's an attitude.
But do you think that mentality amongst diverse communities has changed these days a little bit, or not?
If you think with our parents, from whether they come from the West Indies, whether they come from the Indian continent, whether, you know, that are coming to the motherland, coming from the motherland to work, they probably got a bit of a shock when they came to England, because they came and found this cold, dark place, and it wasn't just cold in climate. It was cold in.
Damian, forgive my interruption. I mean, that's really clearly documented, and you know, you've described it really well. But what I'm trying to understand here is their experience was that you were the next generation. Now there's a generation after us. Do you think things are different for them with parents our age?
Yeah. So what I was going to lead on to say was, so us growing up in, you know, certainly in London or some of the bigger cities, we haven't got that experience of our parents, but we're looking at a different experience where we do look at different, you know, our industries that we want to go into aren't the service industries or the health industries. You know, we can see, oh, actually there's that industry, or there's that, be it design, be it film, be it art. It's like, you know, because we're growing up around, you know, in this country, where in this city where it is all around us, and we see it as something actually we can achieve. I'm first generation West Indian born here, second generation even more so. It's like, hold on a minute, there's nothing stopping me from wanting to go for that, nothing at all.
Yeah, and share with me, have you ever come across any obstacles, hurdles, barriers along the way, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest barriers to cross are the ones that you don't see. So, you know, I like to think that I can do anything, I can achieve anything that I want to do. I've got that mindset. However, there are people that will stop you, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. So, you know, as I've become the times I've become a DOP, I know I've been up for, you know, certain jobs or certain films, have a CV or a show reel that is probably equal to my white contemporaries, but I've been passed over for that job. Why is that? Yeah, because maybe they didn't quite like me or didn't quite trust me. But I do think there is, with certain people, there is a mindset and a subconsciousness that, you know, if you look the way you look, you're probably not quite right for this role. And if that keeps perpetuating, that then becomes an issue and becomes a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point you make. I think part of the breaking the barriers is for people to understand that there's just another human there, and take away all the meaning and significance that they have around somebody of color, and just think, right, who is this person? And it's not about, oh, are they a certain color or a certain background to fit in with what I'm about. It's really quite curious how.
And it's also a very hard one to prove as well. It's a really hard one to prove. But if it keeps happening, you know, a number of times, then you've got to, you know.
Well, what do you think the way around it is then? If it's hard to prove, it can't be seen.
Yeah,
how do you tackle it?
The way around it, which is, you know, again, being driven by the second generation, but us older, you know, first generation, trying to crack into this industry. The way around it again is, and you do get to a point where you think, okay, if I'm not getting the breaks, you know, I know there's enough people, you know, out there, you know, from my background, from my, you know, different background, you know, and you think, well, what is then to stop us actually just doing the stuff ourselves? You know, it takes time, it takes money, but, you know, if we want our stories to be heard, the only way to do that is actually to, you know, you think there's enough people, you gather enough people around you, and you think, okay, and
have you created something yourself like that? Is that something you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly started doing that over the last year and a half. You know, because you don't see your stories in film or in TV, and you think, okay, all right, we've got to do it ourselves. You know, one particular film, you know, which I shot and produced was a short film called Elephant, which is about a black family, just a normal black family, middle-class black family, and the wife, mother, is going through a depression over 24 hours. It's a mental health issue, which,
of course, you know, that's a very topical subject.
and mental health sees no color.
Yeah.
You know, sees no color. But if you were to look at films about mental health on film and TV, you would be excused for thinking it is only one color, because the only people you do see are mainly white.
Yeah.
But, you know, black people suffer it too, you know, and you don't have to be, you know, and black people of all classes suffer. So it was, you know, suffer from it. So that was one thing we wanted to highlight, and it's like, well, this is what we're going to put out, and there are forums and there are places to show the work as well.
Oh, fantastic. So what do you think people from different backgrounds, whether it's socioeconomic or whether it's heritage, can bring to this industry? What can they bring something different?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely, you know, because the issue is, if you've got, you know, the producers, the directors, the writers, the people creating that vision, from the DPs to the editors, if they're all white and they're all from a certain background and a certain class, you're very limiting in those stories that are being told. I'm not saying there isn't you know, an avenue to see a costume drama from the 19th century. Of course there is. But what we bring, certainly from, you know, the West Indies, we bring another experience. People from the Indian diaspora bring another experience. And it's like, we can bring that in. We expand these stories. We can tell a certain truth, and we can make it interesting. We can make it fun, and we can make it, you know, we can make it something that people will want to watch as well. Why do you want to limit yourself? Why do you want to narrow that field when you can have it like that? Rather than...
I think you make a very good point, Damian, especially with all the streamers now who are purposefully going out to get different world view stories. Netflix, Amazon. I know Netflix for sure. They've got a strategy, and they're really calling out to people from different backgrounds, and particularly some people, you know, people with unique stories to share, because their audience is global, and that's the way we're going. Digitally, everything becomes global, so there's more stories should be available for everybody of different backgrounds, right?
There is, and the more the establishment don't want to bend and don't want to widen their view, actually, then, you know what, you get to a stage, it's like, you know what, we're just doing it, the more irrelevant they become. You know, so it's actually within their interests to get on the program and get, you know, and start being more inclusive and start diversifying. Because if you don't, you're going to get left behind, and then no one's going to tune into you anymore.
Yeah. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the impact of Black Lives Matters on our industry?
Yeah, I mean, it was coupled with obviously what we're going through, the pandemic, and with the murder and the slaughter of George Floyd. Everyone was tuned in, because people were at home and they're watching it, so it was so much more amplified. And what it did was actually bring the issues to the fore, you know, and it's gone beyond that now, where, you know, people are thinking, oh, actually, I need to think a bit more about this. I need to think a bit more. Of course, what that does bring with, you know, more, you know, film industry wanting to share those stories, it can actually be quite clunky and quite uncomfortable at times as well, in their desire to, you know, there's a real balance between, well, are you just doing that to make a point in this moment, or is this something that's going to be sustained? The only way we're going to sustain that is if we actually keep it going and carry, you know, and not let them off the hook. It can't just be for this certain time and place. you know,
Well,
we can make
that's
sure.
again a very good point, and this is what worries me, because over the years, when there's been protests, whether it's about the Me Too movement, women, suddenly you get an influx of programming around women, content around women. And I, you know, it leaves me thinking, is this just a knee-jerk reaction to respond to the uproar that's going on out there? Likewise with Black Lives Matter. And, you know, it just, I remain optimistic, but there's still something over here that remains with me. Is this just a knee-jerk reaction?
I was going to say, I remain optimistic. And I'll tell you why I think we remain optimistic is because because of our experience with that, where we know that, oh, actually, is this just, you know, are people just making a point just for this time? Because we've been through that.
Yeah.
So we're aware of that. We're aware of that. So I think there's enough of us and there's enough people out there that aren't going to let that happen. Do you see what I mean? They're not going to, they're going, you know, even if some companies, you know, have got, you know, everyone love to put those little black squares on, you know, and it's like, well, what point are you trying to make? Is this just for now, or is it just a fashion? Do you know what I mean? But because we know that, and because we're armed with that knowledge, I think there are enough people out there and of influence as well that will sustain that. You know, and it's divert. You know, people love to drop the word diversity. It's got to be diversity and inclusion.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
You know? and
just as important.
Recognizing what is inclusive, you know. So when interesting article I read last year before the pandemic on Facebook, Variety magazine had their I don't know 7, but their 7
industry related magazine.
Yeah, they were celebrating their 7 female cinematographers to watch, which is great, which is brilliant. But I looked down the list and they're all white. Do you know what I mean? So you cannot be saying, oh, I'm going to have an all-female crew if they're all of the same color. That still perpetuates the problem. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, in this response, someone posted this, and in response to that, I reeled off 3 black female cinematographers and one Japanese female, you know, and it's like, who are doing good stuff. It's like, why Variety? Sorry, why aren't you looking at those? Because you're being lazy. Because if you do the work, you will find the people out there.
Yeah. Well, Damian, look, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And, you know, I love your passion about trying to get equal opportunities for all. So thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
It's a bigger, wider discussion, but, you know, we're making a start.
Yeah. Thank you, Damian.
Thank you.
There you go. If you'd like to contribute your thoughts and opinions on what has been discussed today, I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Please feel free to leave me a message. And if you would like more details about my series, Diversity and Inclusion in TV, Radio and Film, I post regularly on social media and on YouTube, so you can find all the details there, and feel free to follow me there too. All that remains for me to say is thank you so much for your company today, and see you next time.